Welcome to the Genealogy Gems podcast. It's a show filled with family history, research, strategies and techniques, news and entertainment, and inspiration. And I'm your host, Louise Cooke. Hello and welcome to Genealogy Gems podcast episode number 156. I'm guessing that you will recognize this popular television commercial.
I'm a text walker. I'm paying more attention to my LOLs and OMGs and the CARs that are about to HIT me.
Mayhem is everywhere.
Those Mayhem commercials from Allstate are a riot. But, of course, all that mayhem isn't all that funny when it's happening to you, right? Sometimes it feels like technology companies are having a little mayhem fun with us when they get us all up and running with their software or their app or phone or tablet or whatever, and then, bam, they change it all up. Mayhem. It's not really that we don't want new technology and that it's always mayhem, but rather, one, we sometimes get very little, if any, warning that the change is coming. Two, the change requires investing time and learning all new ways to do something. And I've never met anybody who feels like they have enough time for all that. Three, the change seems to be suspiciously benefiting the changer and not us, the changee, if you will. And four, change often means we have to shift out of autopilot into manual drive, which means it takes longer to do tasks. And we tend to make mistakes more often because our brain, our eyes, and our fingers are all trained to quickly complete the task the old way. Now, you know from this show that I'm usually pretty excited about new technology, and I love seeing what it can do for our genealogy efforts. But don't think that I don't have my moments where I just want to run screaming into the street and chuck my laptop in the gutter. We all have our moments, and I'm here to tell you that I feel your pain, and I have suffered myself a little bit of mayhem last week. In fact, I call it mobile mayhem. See, the thing is, folks love their smartphones. Wal Mossberg, he's a principal technology columnist for the Wall Street Journal. He just tweeted last week that according to an Experian marketing survey, the average American spends an hour a day with his or her smartphone, and iPhone users spend more time than Android users. Well, Google and specifically YouTube, which they own, has definitely taken notice of all this smartphone savviness, and they've decided to turn my world and all other YouTube channel publishers' worlds out there upside down. See, I launched my YouTube channel way back in the Stone Age. 2007. That was even before Google owned YouTube. And I have over 60 videos on the channel already. Now, lately, we've been diligently preparing on getting into a new phase of video production here at Genealogy Gems. So I feel like I've had my hands quite full on the video front. Well, YouTube has implemented a total redesign of the YouTube channel pages. The goal is to make the channels mobile friendly, while still accommodating the wide range of full-screen computer screens that are all out there. But in order to accomplish this, we as channel publishers have to scramble, and we have to get new artwork for our banner, and we have to produce a new introduction video and kind of rearrange all the video layout. So how did I respond to this technological change, you ask? Well, of course, I ignored it until I had about a week left before they were going to flip the switch. And then last week, all of a sudden, it was an emergency to get my channel ready. So I finally broke down. I hired somebody to create the new artwork, and then I spent hours one morning early last week trying to get all the changes made. And my frustration level was growing a little bit because I wasn't very happy with the new design of the new artwork and kind of the way it was fitting with the new layout. And there were so many other things I wanted and needed to be doing besides redoing my YouTube channel last week. Then my sweet neighbor came to the door, and of course my dogs, who think every knock on the door is a masked marauder coming to hurt me, they went totally ballistic, blasting through the living room, knocking over my morning coffee on their way to the door. So now I have frustration with YouTube on my computer, my neighbor at the door, and coffee all over the carpet. After my neighbor left, I got the portable steam cleaner out to clean up the coffee-stained carpet, and it worked for about a total of 45 seconds and then dribbled to nothing. So I went to the kitchen, set it on the counter, and to look at it, and when I took the nozzle off the steam cleaner, it dribbled dirty water all over my freshly cleaned kitchen floor. And no, my kitchen floor isn't very often freshly cleaned. So I spent the next 2 hours cleaning the kitchen floor, fixing the steam cleaner nozzle, and cleaning my carpet. And my YouTube channel was still not quite right, and I wasn't sure how to fix it. And I wasn't working on Genealogy Gems podcasts. Panic started to set in, and all of a sudden I feared I would never figure this out or get it done. And on top of that, I was getting further behind, of course, on the podcast and everything else that I needed to do. So when my husband got home, we went over to Panda Express for dinner because, of course, I hadn't had a chance to do anything about preparing dinner here at home. So he's listening to my day, and as we go through the line, I go to get my soda, and I set my tray on the counter by the soda machine. And I didn't notice that the countertop is actually about 6 inches shorter than the tray itself. And my Shanghai beef and cream cheese wontons unceremoniously hit the floor. So at this point, I was feeling pretty sorry for myself. I'm pretty sure it was all YouTube's fault. Then a woman my age came into the restaurant with her daughter and her husband. And she sat and she waited while they ordered the food because she was in a wheelchair. And needless to say, my perspective made a big course correction. Maybe I don't really know what frustration can be. And get ready for it. Maybe I overreacted all day long. You know, she smiled at me and I smiled back. And then I got to thinking about my day. And I realized it's so often not the change itself that causes the mayhem, but it's our knee-jerk response of fear to some of the chaos. If you've ever found yourself gritting your teeth as the next big technological rollout happens, or sometimes worse yet, a retraction of a favorite technological tool like iGoogle or the Google News timeline, which I talked about in my last Genealogy Gems newsletter, here are a couple of things to keep in mind that I'm trying to keep in mind. First, stay calm and carry on. You know, just like the famous saying from World War II Britain, we are much more effective in difficult times when we take a breath and we stay calm, and then we continue moving forward to the best of our ability at our pace. And sometimes it's our lack of calm that causes us not to carry on as usual, and in the end, bring more trouble down on our own heads. The older I get, the more I can see how human beings actually bring a lot of stuff on themselves. I didn't start picking away at the new artwork and design, of course, until last week before the change implementation, because I was focusing on how they shouldn't be changing it. And yeah, that kind of thinking wasn't really hurting anybody but me, because YouTube wasn't about to call a halt to the change just because some channel publishers didn't like the idea. And simple things like I knew better than to set my coffee where I did, but I was so freaked out about the YouTube design I carelessly set it at dog level. And it was just silly to pull the nozzle off the steam cleaner over the clean floor real quickly, then pull it over and do it over the sink. Second, the technology folks probably have a good reason for the change. You know, sometimes it's financially driven. They just can't make it sustainable as it is. And I would much rather see an inconvenient change than a complete disappearance of a Google or an Ancestry. And sometimes it's because the technology folks do have their eyes on the future, and they do see the big picture of how you and other users are using your technology today. In the end, the change will meet a pressing need, and they are striving to stay ahead of the game, so we aren't moaning down the road later on. YouTube's change is a great example of that. They've made the case that a large percentage of users watch video from mobile devices, and they challenged us actually as channel publishers to check out our own analytics and see if that was true. And you know what? They're right. I wasn't keeping an eye on that, but YouTube was. A lot of you out there are watching videos from your mobile devices, not so much from your desktop computers. And finally, a little investment in education can go a long way. It's okay if you have to slow down for a little while and spend some time getting re-educated to keep up with technology. I decided to sign up for an online class that YouTube was offering for channel publishers, and in just the first hour, I came to much better understand how my channel was actually going to benefit from the changes. And understanding the benefits will give you the motivation to take on the change. I know it's hard to imagine that you can find even more time for education, but I've said this before on the show. I think as genealogists, we really need to actually be budgeting a certain amount of time for education. Don't leave it to be squeezed in a panic, but, reserve about 10% of the time that you consider to be research time for reading and education, going to conferences. And how about another 10% to staying organized? And I bet if you make that investment in the 20% of your time, I guarantee your remaining 80% of actual research time is going to be much more productive. The truth is, if my YouTube channel doesn't look perfect yet, I trust that you guys are still going to be watching, and it certainly won't stop me from publishing new videos. And it's sort of funny that this has been on my mind so much this week, and I've been personally facing the YouTube change here at Genealogy Gems because I just had the opportunity to sit in on a conference call with Ancestry.com where they provided a behind-the-scenes look at some of the changes that they are working on for the upcoming months. And after my week, and all I've been struggling with, and all I learned from it, I actually found myself being much more open to the change as Ancestry was talking about it. I was more focused on spotting the benefits to the genealogist, and I actually found myself admiring their commitment to continuous improvement. See, the thing is, whether you're an individual genealogist or a big company like Ancestry, if you aren't striving for continuous improvement, you're actually falling behind. And the work will become more difficult as time goes on because you're working harder than you have to. Later on in this episode, I'm going to be sharing with you some of the changes. Let's call them improvements now that Ancestry is working on. And that's coming up a little bit later in this episode. Oh, and one more thing. I was just at the Southern California Genealogical Society conference this last weekend, just got home, and I had just gotten done presenting a class, and a gentleman came up to me, and he said, "Wow, I'm so sorry, boy, you were really upset with Google." Now he was talking about the most recent newsletter that came out by email, the Genealogy Gems newsletter. And it was titled, "How Google Broke My Genealogy Heart." Now, he didn't get all the way through the article, and he said he took the toolbox book and tossed it because he thought that I had given up on Google. I hope that if you didn't read the whole article that you do go back and read it. It kind of ties in with what I've just been talking about, which is change that goes on. And my initial unhappiness with some of the changes that Google was making, in that case, retracting products like iGoogle and the Google News Timeline specifically. But be sure and read it, because buried at the end of that article is a wonderful little resource that's going to get you cool, easy access into the existing Google News archive. All the digitized papers are still there, but there's a new way to access them. So be sure and read your newsletter. In fact, I was doing a class on newspaper research at Jamboree, and one of the gals came up afterwards and said, "Oh my gosh, I should have read that newsletter because I kind of skimmed it, and I just figured you were just frustrated with Google. And I didn't realize that what you just showed us on the screen was in the newsletter." So be sure and check out your newsletters when they come. We've got lots of gems tucked in there. And if you're not getting the newsletter yet, I hope you'll sign up for that. It's easy to do. Go to genealogygems.com and sign up with your email address. It comes out just a few times a month. We don't badger you on a daily basis. And I promise it'll be packed with some gems that you can use. So before we get into talking about some of those changes that are on the horizon over at Ancestry, I want to hear from you. And we're going to do that at the mailbox.
Bring me a letter from my old hometown, one with some jokes from my old pal Jim Brown. Bring me a letter from that girl of mine, saying that she's longing for me all the time. Bring me a letter from my proud old dad, who knows that we are winning, and I bet he's glad. But more than any other, a line from my old mother. Bring me a letter from my hometown.
So in the most recent genealogy newsletter, as I mentioned, it was called How Google Broke My Heart. I lamented the fact that Google is no longer digitizing historic newspapers. But I put out a reminder that all of the newspapers that have been digitized to date are still available and free online. And then, of course, I shared that cool webpage that my friend Dave Barney over at Google shared with me that provides an easy way to browse the entire catalog of all the newspaper titles and, of course, also the years that they cover. Well, Chris read that entire article and he wrote me to tell me about something wonderful that happened after reading the newsletter. Chris says, just read your article and went to check it out. I was able to find my grandfather's obituary who died a month before I was born. Thanks for the tip. So there you have it. The benefits of not just reading the Genealogy Gems newsletter, but taking action on it. I love hearing about how all of you take the gems I share and you run with them. So thank you so much, Chris. And here's an email from a listener with Australian roots. And I'm sorry because I don't see a name listed here. But they're writing in about the last episode where I was talking about the new collection of criminal records at findmypast.com. They write, your most recent podcast, excellent as always, thank you, touched on transportation of convicts from the UK. The National Archives of the UK has an excellent podcast series with many casts focused on genealogy issues. Highly recommended for anyone with UK ancestors. And I totally agree. I've talked about that here on the show. If you are in iTunes, just do a search on National Archives UK podcast and it'll pop right up. In one recent series, they discussed transportation, clarifying a lot of misunderstandings in the process. To start, the prisoners were not convicts in the sense that we use the term these days. Violent criminals in those days were hanged. Those transported were primarily debtors and those that committed property crimes. These folks were not forced to immigrate. Instead, they received a 7-year sentence. And after completing their sentence, they were free to stay or return to England. Perhaps the most interesting detail to me was the role the American Revolution played in the settlement of Australia. Before the Revolution, transport was to North America. After the war, that channel ceased to exist, and it took several years for the British to find an alternative, Australia. So, if not for the American Revolution, Australia would not be what it is today. Interesting, okay? And my next email here is from Mike, and he has a question about how to put names to faces. He writes, I recently came across a class photo of a company of Navy recruits graduating on June 13th, 1944 in Farragut Island, Idaho. My father is one of them, but as I was looking at this mass of individuals, many of which would be dead within the year of the photo being taken, I thought, why not put the photo out to the general public and ask people to try and ID everyone in the photo? I just don't know how to go about doing that the best way. That's when your name came to my mind to ask. Well, Mike, I've got 4 tips for you and for anyone who's looking to put names with faces in photographs and wants to tap into the help of the genealogy community and, of course, the public at large. Tip number 1, of course, deadfred.com. This is a free website where you can submit your photograph, include as much information as you know about it, and then other people can search the site and hopefully make identifications. This is a really well-respected site. It's been around for a long time, and I've interviewed the founder, That was in episode number 74. He's terrific and he's passionate about old photos. Tip number 2, consider creating individual photos of each man from the original scan. And that might come in handy so that people can take a look at their faces. Maybe you could concentrate on one row at a time or whatever. It depends on the avenue by which you're going to be trying to get the word out. Tip number 3, consider creating your own free genealogy blog, even if it's just to post one article just about this photograph. Think of it as your own personal message board. You could include the photograph and, of course, some of the close-ups that I mentioned, and then write up a description of what you know about the photo, the class, the location, etc. Make it as keyword rich as possible so that other people will find it when they're doing their Google searches on those keywords and those topics. Examples of keywords, farragut, navel, all of that kind of stuff that would be keywords that people would search on. Blogger.com is a free and a really easy way to set up a blog for free in just a few minutes. And tip number 4, another type of personal message board would be a YouTube video. As I mentioned at the beginning of this episode, it's amazing how fast and the popularity of video is growing and the number of viewers that, a site like YouTube gets in one day. All you got to do is film the photograph, zooming in and out of the faces. And what I would do is use a video editing program where you just drop the photo onto the software timeline, and then you use the editor to zoom in and out, just like it was a camera. So you're not actually filming with a camera at all. You're simply putting the image on the timeline and then zooming in and out. So you'd actually make the image cover, a couple of minutes of time with it for the video, and then use the zoom tool. There's a free program. There's one called Jing, J-I-N-G, that might do the trick, or even better, maybe Windows Movie Maker, which is free from Microsoft. And again, be sure when you do upload this to YouTube, and you can do this really easily if you have a free Google account. So if you got Gmail, if you've signed up for Google Alerts, whatever it is, if you have a Google account, you therefore have an account in YouTube. You can upload your video, and then again, make sure that your description is really full of keywords, things that people might search on. And of course, be sure to add the appropriate tags to the video. So you might have a tag for Navy or that type of thing. All of that is going to help your video get found on YouTube. So I sent an email to Mike with this information, and he sent me back the photograph. So I'm going to have the photo in the show notes for this episode number 156. He says it was taken June 13th, 1944 at Farragut Island, Idaho, at the U.S. Naval Training Station. It's Company 547, Regiment 2, Battalion 8. And he's got the name of a couple of the different people that he's got identified already, including the commander of that particular battalion. He says that his dad is in the top row, 5th from the right. His name is Donald Norman Hall, and he was born April 11th, 1927. So he was 17 at the time the photo was taken. And he was born in Chicago, Illinois. He died on February 7th, 1978. And that's what he knows about the photo. And he took my advice. He set up a free genealogy blog, and he's posted the photo and the text. This is going to be excellent for getting found in Google. So here's the address, everybody. It's adiscoveryofthepast.blogspot.com. And of course, after reviewing the photograph and having the back and forth with Mike, I couldn't help myself. I went to Google Books and had to put in a couple of different variations on the keywords. And I found a book all about the history of the Farragut Naval Training Station. I will have a link on the show notes so all of you guys can find that. That's another great avenue. When you've got some things you know about a time, a place in history, go over to Google Books. It's free. Do a quick search and see what you can find. So I've sent that link over to Mike as well, and hopefully there might be a few answers tucked away in there. Thank you so much for writing, Mike, and I hope those suggestions help some of you out there who may have a photo that you are also trying to identify. And finally, here's a little gem that was posted on the Genealogy Gems Facebook page at facebook.com/genealogygems. We're trying just about every day to post one of my pins from Pinterest. Yes, I love Pinterest. And it's Pinterest, Pinterest.com. It's a place where you can pin some of your favorite things. And of course, I'm pinning family history and related topics. And one of my boards is on heritage quilts. I love all kinds of things to do with quilts in our family history. And one of the items I think I did was a video that I have on YouTube that is about a heritage quilt in my own family, where the ladies in my father's family each took a square and they embroidered their name, the year they were born, and the place where they were born, and then they created the square itself. And it was all put together back in the 1930s. And there was also another pin on a website where people can, in a sense, register historical quilts, and then you can go and search the registry to see if some names pop up from your family history. Well, Marge writes, Lisa, we found this quilt in the Main Street Museum at Polson, Lake County, Montana. It has my husband's grandmother's name stitched into the square, Mrs. S.E. Salter. We also found a Red Cross quilt with relatives' names at a museum in Lanigan, Saskatchewan. Your posting was a good reminder to watch for quilts in museums. So you've got to see this quilt. It's really, really wonderful. Head to the show notes, go to genealogygems.com, go to podcast episodes, and it's number 156. I'll have a link to the post in Facebook where you can see this wonderful quilt. It looks like kind of each square is a spoke of lines, and on each line then out from the center are the various names of the family and collected in squares. It's just wonderful, and I'm so thrilled, Marge, that you found that. Keep your eye out, everybody. You never know what you're going to come across. All right, well, coming up next, we're going to chat a little bit about some of the sneak peek that I got at the changes coming up at Ancestry.com.
From my proud old dad, who knows that we are winning, and I'll bet he's glad. But more than any other, a line from my old mother. Bring me a letter from my hometown.
I've got some great news for all you genealogists out there. Roots Magic 6 is now available, and it offers some of the most customer-requested features, like online publishing, the ability to search every record, not just people, an editable timeline view, which is really incredible, and new web tags, which lets you link people, sources, places, and research log items to web pages, plus dozens of other great enhancements, and of course, all the built-in features that you've come to enjoy. There is a little something here for everyone. Now, if you're already a devoted Roots Magic user like I am, or if you're looking to take the next step in your family history research and finally start recording your family tree in your own genealogy database, or if you've just been wanting to make a switch to a much more user-friendly program, there's no better time to get your copy of Roots Magic 6. Do it now. Go to rootsmagic.com and download your risk-free trial of Roots Magic 6. You'll see why professionals and beginners alike choose Roots Magic at rootsmagic.com. Gem, I want to share with you interesting conference call I sat in on recently with Ancestry.com. And they were getting some known genealogy folks together on a webinar to share some tentative ideas they have around some improvements that they want to make to the search capacity of the website. Now, it's been a while since they've made upgrades to search, but it's solidly on their radar for this coming year. And they started out with actually a very interesting statistic that is sort of driving all of this look at search. And that is that 86% of subscribers have a tree on Ancestry. And what that means is that the majority of the folks already have a tree and are already using that and working with that. And somehow that's playing into the search they're doing on Ancestry. And so the overriding concept of this call was that they are really looking at ways to improve search in connection with family trees. Now, it's interesting because I've heard a lot of folks in talking and traveling around and hearing from you on email that there's not always a lot of satisfaction with trees, or at least family trees are not used as their primary database tree. Typically, most of you, I know, use other software programs and then put maybe a copy or a portion of your family tree up on Ancestry in order to mostly make connections with other researchers, as well as, of course, take advantage of the shaky leaf hints that they give you that kind of give you an idea what some records are that are out there and available to you. But I think they're looking to shift the focus more so to get you more interactive with your tree and to make the whole online experience at Ancestry more connected to the tree. Now, one of the first ideas they kind of dangled out there in front of us, and they made it very clear that these are not absolutely decided on. They're in the works. They had some mock-up examples of how the website might operate that they were able to show us, but none of it is live. And their hope is, though, to start rolling out some of the final search upgrades in the next couple of months. And then, of course, over the next 12 months. So some of the things I might mention today may never come to fruition, but I think most of these have kind of made it to the final level of selection because they certainly had put together some operating examples of this on the website itself. So one of these is the ability to filter search results when searching from your tree. This would be something that would kind of flag you to say, hey, I think that you may already have some of these particular records already on your tree. Or so when you get a search result, you can actually weed some out. I think that would be really interesting to be able to kind of move these out of your way so that you can focus on records that are new to you. So this is the ability to discard a record as the wrong one. And like I say, get it out of your way. Now, as I run through these, I want you to kind of make a quick note. And if you're an Ancestry user, I'd love to hear from you and hear which one of these kind of rings your bell, which one of them maybe sounds like something that you've had in mind in the past. I know for me, there have been many times I've been in there trying to do searches and thinking, I wish I could just get this one out of the way. I know that's not my guy. Or I've already got those records. I've already taken care of that. I wish they wouldn't keep coming up in the search results because it clutters up the whole picture. So very similar to using a minus sign, if you will, in Google, where we subtract a keyword that we don't want to have keep cluttering up our search results. Now, how they go about helping you filter or subtract is still being decided as far as the user interface of the program itself, but that would be the essential functionality. And they're also looking for ways to help you, while on the results screen, do some comparison of records to identify your conclusions. And this would be having the ability to see your tree or the particular area of the tree where you're working on somebody, see your search results as to what it came up with in search, and see the result itself that you've selected so that you kind of get the whole big picture on the screen at one time. Again, to me, on the one hand, it looked a little bit busy. There's a lot of information there, but I really like this idea of the big picture, kind of that overview so that you're not jumping back and forth in between screens. But of course, if you don't heavily use your family tree, if this isn't your primary place to do your research, it might drive you crazy. I don't know, to have the tree across the top or on the side. But again, this is something that they're just kind of tossing around as a possible idea. Now, this next concept that they presented to us, I thought was really interesting. The idea here is that you could incorporate more advanced search features earlier in the process. You would run your initial search, and then there would be some sliders. And each of these might be broken into a variety of different categories in the way in which you might want to filter your results. So this would be the idea of narrowing a time frame, narrowing to a particular set of records, particular people, particular keywords. In the past, you've had to kind of go back and click to go back and revise your search. This is about having, well, the best I can call them is a slider, little slider tools for each of these different things so that you can slide and actually see the changes right there in front of you. It's going to be revising as you're sliding, and the slider itself would have indicators. So as you move to the right or as you move to the left, it's going to have little drop downs that are saying, hey, this is what you're doing. Here's the way in which you are narrowing or broadening your search results. And I think this might be really interesting from particularly the perspective of somebody who might be fairly new to research. Because if you have these time sliders with you and you can work with them and see the effect right there real time on the screen in front of you in your results, it might give some folks who are fairly new to genealogy a really good sense of what happens when we do this, when we revise. Sometimes I think when you're jumping back and forth between screens, you can't really compare the fact that how much you've lost or how much you've gained in terms of making the changes that you did. Seeing it all real time on one screen and being able to, in a sense, finesse those search results, I think could be a really helpful education tool for folks, again, who are maybe on the newer side of genealogy, but also for those of us who are more advanced, long-time researchers to have a little more finesse control right there on the screen and be able to see those results and be able to back off a particular revision or filter if it looks like it's not quite doing the job we were hoping for. So I'm excited to see how that actually ends up coming together. The demo they showed was really cool. I could really see using that right away. But of course, seeing the final layout, who knows, it might look quite different. In fact, when I saw that particular feature, I asked them, when do you think we might be seeing some of these first concepts come together on, live on the website? And again, they said in 1 to 2 months. I'm recording this in mid-June of 2013. So hopefully we might be seeing some of these, not too long in the future. And of course, it'll be interesting for those of you a couple of years down the road who are listening to this episode. You might be thinking, oh my gosh, have we blown past that? But right now, this is kind of what the future of search might be looking like at Ancestry.com. So I'd be really interested in what you think about this. Send me an email, genealogygemspodcast@gmail.com, or a voicemail, 925-272-4021. Let me know if these sound interesting to you, and also if you have some other kind of burning idea on how you would like to see a revision to search come about at Ancestry. I'm certainly happy to pass those on, but I know that many of these are already deep into the works, and like I say, we'll be seeing some things rolling out here very soon.
Really most beautiful thing, I'm quite sincere. Oh, you're dear. Women are angels without any wings. Girls, am I right? You're too polite. I fear I cannot embrace more than two, one in each arm. Where is the harm? Say 10 numbers, they say, is it true? Say 9 or 10. Do it again. Ladies, say when. Oh, you dear, delightful women, why I simply love you all. And I don't much care if you're dark or fair, if you're bad, if you're bold, if you're coy, if you're cold. For the fact remains your women, gay or simple, short or tall. But I can't forget which I love the best, for I love every one of you best of all.
This gem is Women in Naturalization Records. We're nearing the completion of the enormous community indexing project of U.S. immigration and naturalization records. Already we can search newly created indexes to millions of naturalization records at FamilySearch.org, but we don't often find the women that we're looking for. Let's take a look at why that might be. But I'll warn you, the reasons aren't pretty. In the past, women had very few legal rights. None could vote. Married women had even fewer rights. Their legal identity disappeared when they married, essentially, swallowed up in their husband's identity. Married women didn't handle legal matters in their own name, own property, or keep their own money. Sometimes they didn't even have legal liability for their own actions. This was known as the legal principle of coverture. In 1855, a law was made that women who weren't ineligible for other reasons like race were automatically made citizens when their husbands were naturalized. There was no extra paperwork or court costs. Their husbands' papers, in combination with their marriage record, served as proof of the women's citizenship, even though before 1906, you won't usually find the woman's name even listed with their husband's application. This represented a step forward for most married women, but not for all. If a husband didn't naturalize, the wife couldn't naturalize without him. On the flip side, if a U.S.-born woman married a foreigner, she often lost her U.S. citizenship, whether or not she left the country. This problem wasn't fully resolved until many years later. You can learn more about the laws and resulting paperwork in an article at the National Archives, and I'll have a link for you to that in the show notes. Naturalization laws weren't applied evenly either, and some women got their citizenship anyway. Eventually, as women won voting rights in various states in the early 1900s, men who applied to naturalize were sometimes denied because their wives, who would be granted citizenship and therefore voting privileges, didn't speak English or meet other requirements. Men complained that their wives' nationalities were getting in the way, a problem women had lived with for years. In 1922, women gained the right to naturalize independent of marital status. If their husbands were already citizens, they didn't have to file declarations of intentions, which of course is the first step in that paperwork process. Just a petition, which is the second step in the process. Otherwise, they had to fill out both sets of papers. Eventually, even this link to their husband's citizenship disappeared, and they just filled out their own entirely separate paperwork. But what about unmarried women and widows? They could apply for naturalization, but especially before the 1900s, they sometimes didn't if they had no property. They couldn't vote, and the law didn't always treat them fairly. They saw little benefit in investing the funds and time in applying for citizenship. It's fascinating how much we can learn about the status of women by the way that they were treated in the records that we research. It reminds us to look past the paperwork to the reasons and intentions behind it if we really want to understand how people lived. To our foremothers, both those who gained citizenship and those who were denied it, we salute you.
And I've always said if I do get wet, I should still love the rest of you best.
Profile America, Saturday, June 15th. On this date, 62 years ago, it was a Friday, and the first full official day on the number-crunching job for UNIVAC 1 after a dedication ceremony the day before. Delivered to the Census Bureau in late March, UNIVAC 1 was the first commercial electronic computer and launched today's digital revolution by processing data from the 1950 census of population. Now, over three-quarters of America's approximately 120 million households have computers, and 44% have Internet access either at home or outside, such as at schools or libraries. You can find current data on the country's economy by downloading the America's Economy mobile application at census.gov/mobile.
Well, that brings us to the end of Genealogy Gems podcast episode number 156. But before I let you go, I've got one more email here I wanted to share with you. This one comes from Georgia, and she says, first things first, thank you so much for all you do for genealogists. I recently retired, and it was my interest in your podcast long before the last day that drew me to genealogy. While accurate data is of the most importance, I must confess, I'm in it for the stories. Your website and podcast have captured my philosophy perfectly. I want the past to live for my family, not just sit politely on the dusty bookshelf. And Georgia, I couldn't agree more. I am so pleased that you feel that way about the podcast. Next, she says, second thing, it was with your encouraging podcast and an unrelenting techie granddaughter, I have begun a website and blog for my families. Her surnames are Doudna, Brown, Allison, and Gillingham. It's called Billy's Girl, and you'll find it at billysgirl.weebly.com. And I'll have a link for you guys in the show notes so you can check it out. She says, I'm still in the beginning steps, but am having more fun than I ever expected. I'd like to add a link to your website on the pages. But as I am admittedly ignorant in the ways of web world, I'm not sure if this is something I can just do or if I need to get permission from other sites to link to them. I would, of course, be identifying and giving credit for everything I link to. Looking forward to your response, and thank you again for all you do. And she says, P.S. I think I can thank you for bringing me through this touchy first bit of retirement. Thanks again. Well, you're very welcome, Georgia, and congratulations on your new blog. It looks really great. Again, I'll have the web address, billysgirl.weebly.com, in the show notes. I really like the photo that Georgia chose for the banner of her blog. You'll have to take a look at that. And Georgia, I would be honored to have you link to my website. Thank you very much. I'm always fine with that. I don't know if there's some web etiquette, but I always appreciate it when folks link to genealogygems.com and share the good stuff we have over at the website with their readers. So thank you. You know, since my own daughters are all kind of leaving the nest now, there have been many times over these last few years that I've been grateful to have this podcast. And you, my listeners, you've all been helping me kind of get through that touchy transition myself. So I'm very glad if I have been of help or encouragement to you, Georgia, in your retirement. Because, you know, we're all in this together. If you want to get in touch with me, it's genealogygemspodcast@gmail.com. Or you can leave a voicemail on the voicemail line, 925-272-4021. Thanks so much for listening, friend. I'll talk to you soon.